Okay, now it's on. Thank you and welcome to the regular meeting of the New Canaan Board of Education on Monday, January 22nd, 2024. First, we'll stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Next is to review and approve the agenda. Can I get a motion? Erica, second. Penny, all in favor? Passes. Next, we'll approve the minutes. We have two dates to approve minutes for. January 8th, a regular meeting. Can I get a motion? Laura, second. Matt Wexler, all in favor? And then move from Tuesday to Thursday of last week on the 18th. Can I get a motion to approve those minutes? Erica, second. Matt Wexler, all in favor? And I'll have to abstain because I wasn't there. And I think also Julie, also would have to abstain, right? Okay.
Yep, I need to abstain as well, Hugo.
Great, thank you. Okay, comments from the public. To ensure the public's right to be heard, the board set aside time during the meeting for public comments. 2 minutes will be allotted to each speaker, with a maximum of 15 on each subject. Would anybody like to approach the board? Yes, please. John, yeah.
Chairman Alves, members of the board, Superintendent Lutzy, New Canaan Public School staff, friends. My name is John Kriz, and I'm speaking in my personal capacity. I am an out and proud old school conservative. I stand by the dictums of waste not, want not, don't litter, and leave the place better and cleaner than you found it. Our school's cafeterias rely on many disposable utensils, all of which, including uneaten food, goes into the trash and eventually landfills. The EPA tells us that food waste comprises around a quarter of municipal solid waste and over half of methane emissions, which is a greenhouse gas. Perhaps there's a better way forward. Chairman Alves, as a starting point, I suggest you create a committee consisting of select members of the board and the community, with staff assisting, to perform a cost-benefit analysis of 1, switching from disposable to reusable cafeteria items, 2, recycling, and 3, composting. Mr. Chairman, I am wholly against wasting money. I want at least $1 of benefit for every dollar spent. Might some ideas fail this cost-benefit analysis? Perhaps. Might some pass, and pass with flying colors? Undoubtedly. What our schools do sends a message to New Canaan, to the New Canaan community, to parents, and to students. I hope, Chairman Alves, that waste not, want not, don't litter, and leave the place better and cleaner than you found it will always be parts of that message. Let's see if we can do better, Mr. Chairman, together. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Next.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Superintendent Lutzy, members of the board, and school administration. My name is Margot Bright-Thorsheim, and I have been a resident of New Canaan for 21 years. I'm here to represent myself as a resident, but also as an officer of the nonprofit Planet New Canaan. Our school system is one of the best in the nation, primarily due to our financial resources and the vision of the people on this board and in our administration and its faculty. However, many believe that one educational component is missing in this town, and I would also like to advocate for greener schools in the New Canaan district. We have yet to show our youth some basic principles of caring for their home and the planet that their children will inherit. Even while we as parents teach our kids to be environmentally respectful, they are going to school and learning that we live on a disposable economy where convenience rules the day regardless of the long-term cost. And even though we know it is wrong, we have used disposable cafeteria supplies for decades and throw away all of our food waste. We try to make ourselves feel better because some items have been converted to compostables. However, the extra cost for those supplies is wasted because there is no composting, and all those supplies are being incinerated anyway at significant cost to the taxpayers. The trash tipping fees have already increased and are expected to go even higher with the recent incinerator closings. We all know that this is not optimal, and we know that reusable institutional kitchens are feasible because many of us had these in our own youth. We all know that the waste produced by our 5 schools every day is enormous and sends the wrong message to our children. But the costs associated with sustainability has been redirected to other priorities year after year. We believe that it's time to work together to find ways to implement reusable supplies and composting in our schools. This is education that will benefit every single student and the world in which they live. Numerous districts have done this in Connecticut and around the country with significantly less resources. Planet New Canaan, as well as other nonprofits in our town, would like to partner with the board to help make this a reality. I also propose a committee that would help to do the cost-benefit analysis. There are organizations willing to do fundraising to help bring this to a break-even point sooner. And parental support for this issue is strong, with this being the #1 issue that comes up when people give suggestions or feedback to Planet New Canaan. Many high school students are clued into this as well, and there is an organized team of environmental stewards who want to help make this happen.
2 minutes is up, so please.
Thank you.
Please, thank you. Good timing.
I'm Georgie Owsley, 41 Green Ave.
Abby Diamond, 44 Brookwood Lane.
I'm Kate Kupchak, 108 Bennington Place.
And as students who are all inspired and motivated to improve sustainability within New Canaan, and as students at New Canaan High School, one of the biggest issues that we have noticed is the lack of effective recycling. And one of the best solutions to this is redeemable recycling. And it's more valuable because it keeps cans and bottles in the food-safe recycling stream, which is more usable and more valuable, as opposed to units going to the single-stream recycling, where they're less likely to be actually recycled. And actually, in January of 2024, the CT bottle deposit increased from 5 cents a unit to 10 cents a unit, which increases the potential revenue that NCPS could bring back.
One of these solutions is iRecycle, which offers a partnership program where they provide bags and arrange for regular pickups. They also cut a check back to the school besides their take. And Planet New Canaan Youth Board has already met with them to discuss a potential partnership along with the clubs at our high school.
And so I am a junior at St. Luke's, and this past fall I've introduced iRecycle to the school, and so far we've already made $100 off of the redeemables and working with iRecycle, so clearly it's very valuable to the school.
And Weston collected $12,000 last year in redeemable fees. With the new 10 cents a can rate, this revenue should even double. And they use student teams and clubs to oversee the program, and the fees collected go back to these teams and clubs or the school. And I already know, as a club president of one of the clubs at our high school, we have lots of students who'd be willing to get involved with this impact, with this solution, because we see how much plastic pollution there is in our cafeteria every day. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Grace Duffield, 234 Park Street. As many of you know, I was a reporter and I covered the Board of Ed for many years. And I was actually shocked when I learned that these schools that have solar panels on their roofs suspended the use of dishwashers, resulting in an unnecessary number of truckloads of trash carted to landfills. So this isn't good for the environment, and it's also terrible role modeling for the students. There are probably budget implications. Even though the schools may be saving money, the town must be spending they must be getting slammed with the transfer fees. Because I know when I was last reporting on it, every year the transfer fees were going up a substantial percentage. Lastly, I want to remind you that the Board of Ed goals include being good stewards for town resources. And I would argue that this is really in a contradiction to that goal. So that's all I have to say. I just wanted to support the effort, and thank you for letting me share my point of view.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, thank you. Next, action items. The superintendent's 2024-2025 budget proposal. We've got a second read. And
Sure. I can hit one or two sort of highlights, if you like, and then we can open it up. So thank you again for the workshop last week on Thursday evening, and the conversation there and communication back and forth since a couple of calls and otherwise some questions. As you know, our budget, so the FY 2024 budget is $103 million. The superintendent's budget request for FY 25 is 109, which is a 6.53% year-to-year change. And just to hit a couple of highlights on that, the largest single item moving that number is the health benefits, included all in on our self-insurance plan, on our Medicare, our medical, and that is 2.86% year-to-year change. So just as a point of clarification, so folks are understanding, if our insurance number were staying the same year-to-year, so if that was a flat budget number, everything else all in would be a 3.67 year-to-year. That 2.863 million going into the ISF and the benefits is the largest number that we've seen in a while, larger number than we've seen in a while. And as you'll recall, it's really driven by those months of claims, the consecutive months of claims that were higher than what we had historically experienced. And unfortunately, it doesn't look like those are going to roll off prior to the projections being locked in. But every month we get further along, we get the newest data, the newest information and plan data from Joe. And he's able to do a new projection, update that projection, and that's why he talks about the hurricane model that starts wider but gets more and more narrow as we get closer. So we will be hoping that we'll get improved numbers as we continue through the budget process. And what we've done in the past always has been, if that number improves based on those projections, we let the town board know, whether it's the Board of Finance or more often it's the town council, because that's the last stop along the way. And if that number improves, we reduce the budget by that amount, right? So we're able to, in real time, bring that budget number down if it improves. Of course, if it goes the other way, we're not able to add to the budget at that point. So then we wind up, having to make some hard decisions. That really I won't say it hasn't happened. We generally have some reserve in the account to try to sort of fill that gap if we need to. This year we're very tight on the reserve. As a matter of fact, I think a little bit of this is to make up for what we're anticipating needing out of the reserve this year in order to be covering that corridor, which is the 8%, the 60% of the 20% of the aggregate stop loss. I know now I'm getting in the weeds. But long and short of it is, it's a large number on benefits. It's the 2.86% of this 6.53 is simply that benefit number. So without it, all in on everything else is 3.67. If we also, another number, sort of driver to consider, is our change in the out-of-district tuition number, which is, again, a real-time number. We know this is always, it's fluid throughout the course of the year based on move-ins, move-outs, et cetera. And that 415 accounts for 0.4% of that 6.53%, again, meeting those obligations. We've talked about transportation a little bit, and the 2% contract that we have, which is incredibly competitive as we go out and we look at what our neighbors are doing as they're going out to bid. They're getting double-digit numbers back for their year-to-year change in transportation. Part of this is the relationship we have with DATCO. Part of it is the move that we made years ago to go to propane buses, so it extended the life of those buses and the engines because it burns cleaner. There's lots of factors involved. Anyway, long and short of it is that 2% is 94,151, sort of net of all things, which is 0.09. So if we look at just those three large drivers in the budget, all other things aside, the remaining is a 3.18% out of the 6.53. And that's where we look at, salaries and other large drivers that are in the budget as well. That was the cover page of the handout from the workshop as well. Right, so if we look at the cost of moving the base salaries forward is about 2.6 million, which is 2.56% of the 6.53. And then the one FTE that we're shifting over from the grant and the new position. So I guess the recap is that 6.53% is made up primarily of those couple of largest drivers, insurance being the largest out of all of them, at that 2.86%. And then our base salaries are the 2.5%. And it goes on from there. So we've done our best to bring in a responsible budget that meets our obligations, continues with the program that we have, and tries to find a couple of ways strategically to invest in the system. And those are those couple of new positions that we've talked about. Couple over at Saks, of course, driven by enrollment, and then that classroom coach or the math coach in a couple of other spots. But as we look across and we try to see, are there other opportunities? I know we mentioned the FTEs over at Saks and the teaming model there as one possible opportunity. Otherwise, I think we've scoured to look for some ways to, whether it's to try to save where we can or to try to defer where we can, which are some of those items that we had on the deferral list. So don't know if that's enough to sort of get the ball rolling, get some people's thoughts.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Lutzy, and thank you to the administrators and all the teachers for putting so much work into this. We met on the 8th, presented with the budget. We had an opportunity as a board to email questions after going through it, and then during the workshop, able to talk through it for a few hours and get a little bit deeper understanding of not only the work that goes into this, but where some of these cost increases are coming from. So I'm going to open it up for continued discussion. Brendan.
Yeah, I'm supportive of the budget. I think there's, of all the things that aren't in here that I'd love to see in here, I'd say for me it would be the additional counselors at the high school, though I realize, it makes sense to try to stage things, particularly in a year where we're dealing with, meaningful health and other benefit cost increases, which is, being seen all over the place. So, very supportive. I feel like it's thoughtful and, it's the product of some really good work. So, thank you.
Thanks, Brendan. Penny?
So I had asked for a little bit more information with regard to the guidance counselor deferral. I'd like to see us. That's a definite need. I think it's been there for a while. I think Dr. Lutzy had a little bit more information he was going to give us on that as to where our resources would best be spent if we wanted to, as to what the best proposal would be for this coming year.
That's right. So what we talked about for a little bit, what we've been thinking about, if we were going to make an investment into the counseling, it would be a suggestion about looking at a 1.0, not the 2.0 FTEs, with the positions that we currently have, and really taking a year to take a deep dive into to study what works best in and what the needs are, given sort of the changing landscape of college admissions now. We've talked in the past about the change with the schools going test optional, with the number of students that are applying to individual schools, both from New Canaan, but just overall, where the colleges have seen the number of applicants that they receive completely explode. And in conversations that I've had with some deans of admission and otherwise, they've really been sharing with us that they have to staff up in the fall and into the winter to read all the applications to a level and degree they've never had to do before. So what that tells us a bit is that doing more to make sure we get the word out about who we are as a school, make sure that people understand the expectations here, the excellence here, the education that our students leave the school with, so that when they're reading the application from a student from New Canaan, they have that knowledge. And doing it regularly, because there's such turnover there, as there is turnover in all industries, and the need to, when they do staff up, those folks that come on staff don't necessarily know much about the schools that they're reading on. So to sort of build those relationships and take a look at the system that we're currently using, and maybe there's a different model. You know, maybe we can make some changes in the assignment of responsibilities. For instance, we've talked briefly about the AP testing coordination and management and some of the other responsibilities that our counselors may have taken on that could perhaps be somewhere else, so that their unique skill set and knowledge around both the college admission process, but also the emotional mental health for students, because they are also the front line of that. And while I think more sort of, as Cindy had mentioned before in some of the response, more help around social work and psychology is very important. I think across the board, it's a shortage probably everywhere. I do think that the value added by school counselors at the secondary level is, I think, unique and important, incredible, and very, very valuable because of the lane that they're in, where they're interacting with the general student population on a very regular basis. So they're establishing those relationships so that kids have a place to go as a first line of communication and help if they really need it. But so one thought, I know we had talked about two counselors, and that was the identified need, would be to adjust that, to put a committee together with board members, with our counselors, with administrators, with a few others, and to really do some research together and make a more sort of holistic proposal going forward that we would talk about in the 25-26 budget year. I think that was my thinking.
So, I mean, that said, I mean, we had an example tonight of our amazing high school students. They're just terrific, and the whole college admissions game has gotten so more complicated without the SATs and, that data point being gone. That makes it even more important to help sell our students, to have our guidance counselors going and touching all the colleges and universities which our students are interested. So, I mean, I'm all in favor of this. I think it's a great two-step plan. I think we should go ahead and move and bring one guidance counselor into the budget for next year, and then have this deep look at how best to move going forward, given the changing complexities of students getting into college, and also the changing and increasing needs that we've been hearing about. Just the average student's level of concern and care. I don't want to say anxiety, but I just think a little bit more counseling along the way, starting, in 8th grade as you go into your tuition, transition in terms of helping to pick the right course load. There's so many classes that you can do, and making certain that every student can optimize their high school experience with the amazing teachers we have here. So I just think that that's something that we could do a little bit better, and I think an extra counselor to shorten the load is the way to start for next year. So Dr. Litzy, I think I asked you to figure out what the change in percentage on the budget would be if we did that. It's I don't think we're increasing it much from the 6.53, and I think it's a action taken that will service all of our students at the high school. Grades 9 through 12.
Right. It's an addition of approximately 0.06 to the number, because it's you'd put it about 65,000 on the salary line. There could be a nominal in the benefits line, depending upon if you were to hire the person and if they would take the benefits. But so anywhere from 0.06, 0.07.
All right. So anyhow, I would make that motion to increase the operating budget by the 0.0 by adding one guidance counselor.
Sorry, can I ask a question first about that? So I just wanted to clarify, because I hear Penny's points on all of the college process, when we're talking about a counselor, we are talking about somebody who stays with students starting as rising, when they're rising into their freshman year, because I just want to clarify, this is somebody who would take on the full workload of a counselor, which is helping choose your courses, helping you come up with your additional, like your initial list of colleges, helping you through the testing as well as the application. Like, it's the full gamut of what we're talking about.
That's correct. That's what our counselors do now.
Yeah.
Right? So they pick them up, they identify their caseloads when the students are coming in ninth grade, and they stay with them right through, which has worked very well, so it would be the same thing. Now, of course, adding a counselor means there are some that are with a counselor now that might be shifted over to a new person. But that does happen. We had 2 counselors leave this year for various reasons, and so they have new counselors that they're working with now. That's fine.
Great. Great, because I do think the early parts of the process are also incredibly important, like how you choose as a 8th grader going into 9th grade, how you're choosing your courses and how that plays into the later parts, and having a counselor and having counselors who are not overloaded with their student load is really helpful for that process.
Brendan?
Yeah, I'm supportive of that. As I said earlier, I think it's an important role. One of the answers we got was that the caseloads for counselors today are about 170 students, and I think this would take it down to 150. They do a great job now, but again, I just think they can, the kids at the high school, I think, would really benefit from having a bit more time with their counselors if they needed it. And I think Erica made a really good point, which is that they're with these students for their entire high school career, and they develop relationships, and I think the closer those relationships are, the better. So I'm supportive. Thanks.
So I just want to clarify, so I heard a motion to add that, or, right?
Yes.
And then there was, I assume, a second and discussion, which we've started, which is great. And it sounds like Laura wants to speak.
I just have one more.
Oh, sorry.
To go along with it. So just for clarity's, so Penny's making a motion to add a counselor, and are you saying we lost 2 high school counselors this year?
Just turnover. So they've been replaced by
Okay.
new hires.
Okay.
I was only saying because then, so the caseload shifts, you have a new counselor, so you try to be with them all 4 years.
4 years, but it's not always.
If a new counselor were to come on board, we'd have some that are with other counselors that would be shifted over to the new counselor.
Okay. And the motion is to add 1 full FTE
Yes.
to the high school.
Matt, did you have your hand raised? No.
Oh, yeah. As far as addressing the motion or just in general? Oh, for the motion, I have no.
Any other discussion on the motion to add 1 full FTE for guidance counselor? All right, I guess we'll vote on the motion. We'll vote on the motion. So all in favor of adding 1 full-time FTE for guidance counselor, please raise your hand. Okay, so it looks like I didn't see Julie.
Yeah,
Oh, hand raised. Okay, so it looks like it passes. Right? And I guess moving on to continue, so that motion passes. And moving on to continuing the discussion about the budget.
Yeah, I guess my thoughts on this, and sort of to adopt this as the BOE's budget, right? I feel like that we haven't had the participation or sort of really any iterations except for like literally what just happened, or guidance as to the budget, right? I think that, the arguments were made, at least in the workshop, that our goals are the guidance, and I just don't accept that as being sort of a budget guidance. I think that, a perfect example is what we just witnessed, right? I mean, I think we have goals in mind, but there are different ways to achieve them. For example, we have a goal to safely transport our children, right? And so especially the out-of-district placements, right? But do they need to be in $100,000 Suburbans, or could it be achieved in a $40,000 minivan? And then certainly we could add 2 more counselors, right? I mean, I think that we can't just say that abdicate our responsibilities to the administration as a board. And I think as a consequence of doing that, we further abdicate those responsibilities to the Board of Finance, who will come back with some arbitrary amount and pushback on the administration, right? And so I think that, we need to, I don't know how I can support a budget that, quite frankly, wasn't involved in other than sort of asking and answering questions, but there were no sort of iterations or back and forth or even alternative scenarios presented that allow us to sort of see impacts in where we can maximize efficiency. For example, I think the counselor idea is great. I mean, but when we look at the budget, what does that mean? We can't just simply add more and more without truly reflecting on, okay, where do we take that from? How do we prioritize? Because there are finite resources, and quite frankly, sort of the demands are infinite. And so we need to balance that, and I think we've done the administration a disservice. I don't blame you, Dr. Lutz. I mean, I think you should have asked for 10 million because you've got no pushback for 7. So, but I do think that we've abdicated that responsibility as a board, and that's why I can't approve this, because it's not my budget, and I've been involved in the process to the extent that I would like that I could defend to the town and to the others that approach me about the need for this. I see high level drivers, but into the details and into the weeds or other iterations of the budget, we haven't seen. And quite frankly, there hasn't been time to see those. I mean, in all fairness to you and your administration. So that's my views on the budget.
Thanks, Matt. Laura?
Yeah, I would just add to that, I am struggling as well to adopt the superintendent's budget as a Board of Education budget, because I feel like we've only seen one iteration, no alternatives, no lower, middle, higher, nothing to compare this budget to. And the turnaround seemed very, very tight. And I understand that. I'm appreciative of the work that you've done, Dr. Lutzy, and that your support team has done. And I mean, I think on a personal note, like we are all are stakeholders in the school, but I'm a beneficiary of a lot of these programs here. I've talked about how I have multiple children across the district, and I have children who receive services, and I'm grateful for the talented teachers that we have and the quality of education that my children receive on a daily basis. But I'm not just a parent, and I feel a big responsibility as an elected official to try and balance the very diverse needs of the town and the diverse desires and their thoughts on our stewardship of a budget that's over $100 million. And I am struggling to see how do we sustain an increase of almost 7% year over year, and what does that look like going forward? And is there a way that this budget process can maybe improve? Like, is there a way that we as BOE members can have a little bit more impact on the numbers? Can we see your ideas on different iterations or different possibilities, or prioritizing something and constraining another way? Is there, I guess, overall, I feel like we're a capable Board of Education, and we're so lucky to have one of the nation's best superintendents. We really do, I really believe that. And I believe as well, though, that we can operate on a more constrained path while prioritizing academics, keeping our student achievement and academic achievement high, maintaining our welcoming classrooms, and supporting our staff. And so I just would ask that, is there a way that we can improve this process moving forward?
Thank you. And Brendan?
Yeah, can I just ask, are we talking about, process and understanding the numbers and the budget and how it's built? Or, are we fundamentally asking to, as a board, build the budget? To me, as a board, our role is to essentially understand what goes into fulfilling our goals, what it costs to fulfill our goals, and if we have views based on the, whatever it is, 120 pages or so of the budget materials, or based on the answers to the questions that we've asked, that we should do things differently, then we should ask those questions. We should do it, we could have done it last week, we could do it tonight. But at the end of the day, we have actually, over the last 5, 7, 8, 10 years, done better than inflation overall. We've performed at the top of the state, among the top schools in the country. We're doing it efficiently if you look at a per pupil cost. And so I think if there are issues that we need to raise, whether it's process or substance of the budget, we should talk about them and raise them. But I think we need to push a budget forward so that the schools can operate. We can go through the town's process and make sure that the schools are funded next year.
Thanks, Brendan. And then I see that, I thought, Julie, is your hand up? It was up?
Yes,
Okay.
it is.
Okay, great.
It is. I do think the process can be better moving forward, and I agree with both Matt and Laura on what they said. I also agree with Brendan on what he said. I think we as a board should have that discussion, so we don't have this conversation every year when the budget comes up, which I feel like we do have this conversation every year as the budget comes up. So why don't we all meet, talk about it, figure it out, so we don't continue to have this conversation. That being said, I am supportive of this budget. One of my questions to Dr. Lutzy was about looking into a green initiative for moving away from single-use plates, utensils, et cetera. And we have saved a lot of money with some of our green initiatives. And if we could maybe look into this and see if it makes sense, I think it would be great if we could work that into next year's budget. But all that being said, I am supportive of the budget. And Dr. Lutzy, thank you, and the administration for all of your hard work.
Thanks, Julie. Erica?
So I was just going to ask, one of the things that I got from the presentation on January 8th was around what I did see as sort of scenarios in essence, because there was in the presentation a listing of staff adjustments that are not in our current year that, Brian and the staff were suggesting for next year. And so those were not staying the course forward, but adding, enhancing our educational programs. And then one thing that came after that were deferrals, which were things that were, some staffing options that were considered but then deferred, which would be in essence another scenario, but that was not the one that was brought forward. So I hear you that they weren't run through as complete scenarios in the numbers, but there were I saw some options of, here's the main option that the team is bringing forward, but these staffing adjustments we can discuss. And then these deferrals, as Penny brought forward, one of them we can also discuss that aren't currently in the numbers. So I just wanted to ask, is that different than, because some of the other pieces that are drivers are areas where we don't really have scenarios, right? Like we don't have scenarios on our out of tuition placements, right? We can't control that. So I guess I just wanted to ask if like that was somehow a partial answer to the question. It's just presenting it somewhat differently would be helpful.
Well, I don't think, what I see there is, okay, we could have done this or this. I never saw a conclusion, right, or a scenario run through, to your point, right? I don't think that, we can speak in hypotheticals, and we can speak sort of in wholesale terms, so let's cut the athletic department or whatever, right? But in reality, a budget is much more detailed than that, and it requires, a conversation as to, okay, what are our objectives and how can we achieve those in the most efficient way possible? I gave that example of the Suburbans, for example, right? Is that a scenario that's run through? I think that how we can't hide behind the fallacy, because one thing I took away from that presentation as well, Erica, is that there's no correlation between, certainly at this level, between performance and cost per pupil, right? That's not observable, and it's been disproven even by our own administration. And so my point being is that how can we honestly say that this is the best path forward if we haven't done the appropriate diligence beyond sort of asking, high-level questions, but saying, okay, what does a scenario with this % increase look like, or what if we made these adjustments to to the budget in these areas. How could we find some savings, right? And I think that exercise, it's an exercise in discipline so that we're always revisiting, so that we can continue to have the flexibility going forward, and quite frankly, so that we're not subject to the whims of the Board of Finance because they perceive our process as being, quite frankly, very, very loose, right? And so that's my point. We haven't, so long story short, we haven't seen scenarios. We're saying, well, we could have done this, but what does that look like all the way through? And again, those are big, and we can't just highlight big items when the purpose of a budget is to maintain discipline on the small things, because in aggregate, it has a big impact, just like your personal budget.
Penny?
I guess that, maybe we could look at the whole election process, right? It's a little bit odd that we elect our officials in November, and then mid-January, they have to vote on a $100 million budget. And I know that I had that sort of shock my first year. Like, whoa, it wasn't $100 million, but it was still a shock. And so I think what you're doing is you have to look at the goals that I did. I mean, a lot of board members do. Is you look at the goals, and then to a certain extent, in this first year when you're looking at the whole budget, you're riding and having faith and confidence in the work that prior boards of education and administrations have done. I mean, I can tell you, we could spend half an hour with you going over all those Suburbans. We save so much money. I've heard the presentation 3 or 4 times, at least. We save so much money compared to other districts. Not that we couldn't try and do it better, but we have it. We've had huge discussions with the Board of Finance on it. They've asked us to, on that particular issue, they've asked us to bring forward, I think it's 2 vehicles every year, so that we can, 3 vehicles every year, so that that's the best way that allows them to budget well. So that's a discussion we've had with the Board of Finance over years. There is so much history in this budget, and this budgeting process, started, with the goals we set last summer. And then, one of the pages I look at is I look at page 23, which are some of the changes, and I see these changes really, they're responding to, we want to teach, it's 2 more, I think it's 2 more sections of world language. So we can teach, I think it's an additional French and Chinese that our students want, because we're now giving Mandarin Chinese. We have the innovation TA that we've been working with throughout. So we've been, as a board, we've had meetings on innovation for the last 2.5 years. We have some of the reading specialists and the math specialists. We looked at the scores, that we got on our standardized testing in October, and we did really well, but, we can do better. And I think some of these, positions are here to address that and to address any additional issues we might have, from COVID. The pre-K at West is, a position you have to have to address this increasing enrollment bulge that we have. The math coach is what it is. I mean, I look at all of them and I'm like, all right, I get it, why we need all these. And I've gone over the classroom size goals, and those have been set, and those are, sort of sacrosanct, from board to board to board. So you don't want to do that. And Dr. Lutzy talked about, where within those goals we try and be with our classes. And why, when after COVID, we tried to keep them a little bit smaller because we were a little bit worried about our students, but now we're shifting higher. So I just think that this is a huge amount to sort of understand and take into effect. But I've seen, but I think it's a really well-built budget. You can go through it. You can look at all the areas that are red where we've cut. So it's line by line. There's nothing hidden. We're looking at, what we think we're going to gain from turnover and making an estimate at that. A lot of times in the process, if by the time we get to our last vote, we actually see an increased change in teacher turnover, we'll offer, we say we think we can actually increase that number. But we can't do that now at the beginning of the process. And then with respect to the health insurance, I'm sorry, then I'll shut up because other people should talk. But with respect to the health insurance, that's really sort of fun to dig in if you want to be geeky about it. But, I mean, we have saved so much money as a district, just millions and millions of dollars by being self-insured. And what that means is that it's bumpy, right? Because some years you have good years and some years you have bad years. And, so this year it's a little bit of a bump up. And so we just have to, so I don't think we can focus on the 7%, but that we almost have to take health insurance out and look at that separately. If you take it out and you look at it separately, and you look at, what we're at, and then you take out special ed and what you can do with that, and we're right at inflation, for 2023, which is not really one of our goals, but maybe it's a marker, or somebody's quizzical, is my math off? Anyhow, but what? Okay. So I just think this is a really well-constructed budget. I love the visibility. I love the fact that when we take it to the town bodies, they can see through to pretty much every single classroom and what we're providing. And so that's why, I would support it. And if you're having, I have empathy for where you are now, because I think it's a whole lot to take in. But I would hope that you would support it because of your sort of faith in the administration and the incredible hard work that's gone into this budget by boards of education, for ages.
Phil?
Yeah, I also want to make one point as it relates to still being a fairly new board member. So when, in my first couple of years, we had these initiatives that kind of came down the pike, and we weren't sure whether these were things that were always going to be coming, how valid they were, and I think there was a fair amount of skepticism just at whatever the new thing sort of was. And as far as the Literacy Academy and the classroom coach so far, I think both of those have worked out really, really well. I expect the math coach is needed and will probably work out incredibly well as well. So just echoing everyone's thoughts. I think it is a thoughtful budget. I think it's given the drivers, I think it makes a lot of sense, and I am 100% supportive.
Brendan?
I just wanted to make one quick point, and Penny sort of commented on this, is, when we've been in front of the Board of Finance and the Town Council in the past, one thing that they've, for as long as I've been on the board, and Dr. Lutzy's been superintendent, they've commended us on the level of detail in the, budget book and the presentation and, the work that the schools have done. So I think as long as, our experience has been, as long as we have good, rationale for what we're doing, which again is kind of rooted in our goals as the New Canaan Public Schools, and we're, spending money wisely, we're not, we're outlining, where all the dollars are spent, and we believe, it's necessary to get the outcomes that we've gotten, which are obviously good. We've gotten support, and, we're dealing with some, very financially, in a lot of cases, savvy and diligent people, and, they understand that, this budget has been put together with, care and diligence.
Thank you. Laura?
Yeah, I would just say I appreciate the time that you took to say that, Penny, and I appreciate the challenges of high inflation and rising healthcare costs or fixed healthcare costs. And I think that this is helpful, because I think a lot of the times a concern is that far too often budget expansions are approved and put in place without being tied to a tangible program that shows or increases academic excellence or academic achievement. And I think that as a board, that's something that we really do need to be focused on, that as we approve or adopt and take the superintendent's budget and put our names on it, that we can say how this is really leading to our children's academic achievements. And I think to Mr. Campbell's point earlier, are we doing that, or are we maybe abdicating that a little bit to the Board of Finance? Like, is the Board of Finance really where we get pushback and we reduce costs in the school, or because historically they have asked for reductions, and reductions have been showed and been modeled out. And again, to what I was saying earlier, we haven't seen any other iterations. Like there's one iteration that we were given, and kind of our questions were all to explain in how it fit into this number, not what to compare it to, or what could be constrained, or what could be deprioritized or reduced or deferred. And so I guess the question that I have would be, is it the Board of Finance's job to get that lower number, or the Board of Education's?
Well, I guess that what I would say is what I see as our job is, and it's what we instruct our administration to do. I mean, I remember when we changed the goals to make certain that we made it more financial stewardship. And we said to the superintendent, I think this was before Dr. Lutzy, we said, no, we want you to focus every single year on what you can cut as well as what you need to grow. And we want that in the goals. So you need to change the goals so that that's what you're focused on in every single decision you make all year long. I mean, I remember that change sort of in the goals for the when we did it, and I think it helped. But I think it's our responsibility to put forward the budget that we think is what is going to best serve our students for the coming year. And if the town comes back and they say, well, sort of you guys are the experts and we understand why you do that, but because of X, Y, Z, we're not going to do it, then we'll have that discussion with them. And we've had that a number of years, and usually they come around. Sometimes there are compromises. Sometimes we play, you find these one-time gains that I don't always agree with, but we've had. So we'll see where that goes this year. But I think our job is to start it off. We don't want to start off with a compromise. We want to start off with what we think, the 4,000 plus students who enter the doors every day are going to need next year. That's what we want to represent without being excessive, but that's what we want to support. And then we'll talk with the town bodies.
I appreciate that. I like the move the election day. I think we should address that in the Constitution. But I would only point out that inflation's been referenced a few times, and then cost increases, health insurance has also been referenced. We should keep in mind that in the U.S. economy, 15 to 20% of the economy is driven by healthcare. And so to exclude that, but then exclude it from being a driver of the CPI would be intellectually dishonest. So just for what it's worth.
Okay. Not specifically, but related to that, something that Penny referenced that I think about a lot is that when we have our set amount year to year that we want the budget to be, I would hate for the amount that we spent on programming to be related to the amount we have to spend on insurance. Since the amount we spend on insurance, as we know, is going to be bumpy and go up and down, and that is a factor from our decision to be self-insured. And we know there'll be good years and then we know there'll be tough years. I wouldn't want our programming to be expanding and contracting to fit a space around insurance. I think that would be doing a disservice on a year-to-year basis for us.
All right, I agree.
Anybody else? All right, seeing as there are none. So I appreciate everybody's candor and discussion. I think that we've all have very passionate and valid points. I certainly appreciate where Laura and Matt are coming from and wanting to be more involved in the process. I know that when Phil and I and Julie came on a couple years ago, we felt the same way, that the process maybe was a little bit rushed. But like Penny had mentioned, we learned to have faith in former board members and the administration. And having been through the process myself now twice, this being the third time, and having a number of conversations with Dr. Lutzy and other members of the board, and looking through the budget with a fine-tooth comb, I'm confident that we put forth the best possible budget. Nobody likes price increases on anything. I can appreciate Campbell's point in that, as anything, whenever you watch the government ad, you don't ever really see them take away. And as it relates to education, I think that now you're starting to pick favorites, and I think it becomes really, really challenging. But I do think that, and Julie mentioned that earlier, that if we can figure out a way to have a deeper discussion where all board members feel like this is also their budget and not just the administration's budget. I think that that could be really helpful, and maybe we do find areas of inefficiencies or potential greater efficiencies. So I'm very supportive of the budget. I appreciate the work that's gone into it, and that's it. So I think that at this point we will vote on the budget. So all in favor of? Sorry. Oh yeah. Does anybody agree? So the okay. So we will move to pass the budget as amended.
We used to call all in favor.
All right, all in favor? All opposed? Okay, the budget passes. Thank you. And statement of accounts.
Thank you, and I'll turn it over to Mr. O'Keefe. You have, below your agenda, you should have the statement of accounts packet for December 23. And the room empties, as it always does. Nothing personal.
Nothing personal. Anyone else would like to leave? Darlene, you may leave. Okay, this is the statement of accounts as of December 2023. Excuse me. Start with the operating fund, which pages 1 through 9. So as of December 31, our operating fund totals $42.8 million year-to-date, which is 41.56% of our full-year budget of $103 million. The total amount of encumbered funds as of December is 53.9, or 52.4% of the budget. The encumbrances are largely made up of salaries, benefits, property services, including utilities and maintenance contracts, and purchase services, primarily transportation, out-of-district tuition. Those accounts just mentioned make up roughly about 94% of the encumbered budget. The remaining balance of about $6 million, or 6% of the budget, is currently unencumbered and is made up of, other things that are not typically encumbered, such as overtime, substitute teachers, and so on. On page 5 of the package shows a chart that indicates the year-to-year budget attainment. And right now it indicates that our spending this year relative to our 24 budget is running slightly ahead of the prior year attainment of the 23 full-year actuals, and is primarily attributable to some timing differences in spending in supplies and equipment. And when I say by timing differences, I mean that we're spending to the budget, but last year we spent it later. This year we're spending it a little sooner than, and it shows the timing difference year to year. Also included on the next page in the package is the budget reforecast. We do this each year during the budget cycle. The December statement of accounts reflect the results of our current year budget reforecast. In total, the bottom line remains the same, and as you'll see on the top of page 2, and in the current period transfers column in the details chart of accounts, the main drivers were decreases in salaries for $177,000, and contract services decreased $68,000, and offsetting increases in benefits, primarily in the internal services fund, and purchase services attributable to athletic transportation. On pages 10 and 11 of the package is the grants. Our total awarded grants totaled $2.6 million. Most of these are two-year grants, with year-to-date expenditures of $676,000 and a remaining balance as of December 31 of approximately $1.9. Again, these are primarily two-year grants. In school lunch on pages 12 and 13, our year-to-date revenue totals $1.3 million, or 44% of our full-year budget of $2.9. Year-to-date expense is $1.1, or 42% of our full-year budget. As a result, our net income is currently at $151,000, or 65% of the full-year budget. This year-to-date performance should, with the higher budget than expected, than budgeted, will help us fund some of the needed equipment purchases. In facilities, rental, donations, and summer school, which is on pages 14 and 15, start with facility rental. Revenue to date is $103K, and year-to-date expenses are $131, resulting in a current year net loss of $28. So we're pulling from the fund balance. Expenses include additional investments related to the dome project that were not assumed in the donation or in the capital budget. Despite these investments, the fund balance still remains positive at $210K. Donations year-to-date are $652K and includes the $350K received in July for the dome project. Expenses total $484 through December, and again, mostly related to the dome project. Finally, summer school revenue is $148,000 with expenses of $133, resulting in a small profit of $14,000. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay. Moving on to, once again, comments from the public.
We need a motion to accept the transfers that are in the statement.
Naturally. Need a motion to accept the transfers as detailed in the statements of accounts. Matt Campbell, second. Penny, all in favor? Passes.
Thank you.
No any comments from the public? All right, moving on to announcements and future business.
Sure. Thank you. So thank you, Board, for adopting the budget and moving that process forward. I know that it takes a lot. There's a lot to it. I know that it's been a pretty intense couple of weeks and a lot of reading through the binder and studying and questions and answers and thinking. And we're grateful for all of that, better for all of that, and very much open to discussion if procedural changes or other things, because it's my goal, it's our goal to make sure that you have whatever you need to best understand the budget, to be able to ask questions, and to have entry points into influence, as you talked about. And I think one of those that will come up, we mentioned it before, is the negotiation opportunity with the teachers in the summer, which the legal fees for that is included in the budget. That's a part of that, sort of those drivers, and a bit of an increase there. But there'll be other opportunities too, and we've even been talking about a couple of them that may be coming up. Another opportunity for the board will be, and I sent an email today, hopefully you received, we have hired an interim principal over at East that will start in February for us. John Grasso is going to be joining us. As you know, with Dr. Wolick moving to become the assistant superintendent in New Fairfield. Hi, Chris. We are looking for an interim to fill in. So John has accepted that role. John has worked with us before. He was our interim principal over at South for a while. He was a career educator in Greenwich. He retired as a beloved principal of an elementary school over in Greenwich, and he's been doing interim jobs for a while. He's actually been in Darien, he's been in Westport, he's been in Greenwich, he's been here in New Canaan before. He's been all throughout, I think even Wilton perhaps. He was in Ridgefield, so he all throughout the southern Connecticut here. So he's excited to come back. He's walked through the school, he's met with Chris, he's learning the ropes a bit, and he'll start for us right away in February when Chris makes her transition. The opportunity for the board is we will be putting together an interview committee in order to meet with candidates. We anticipate there'll be a deep pool of candidates there, and are looking forward to that process as well. So more to come about that and how sort of the timeline around that. We've got the posting out. We have another administrative hire we'll be doing with our visual and performing arts director. So we'll be looking for Board of Education members to join on that committee as well. And that process will get underway very soon. And that's also a posting that's out. And if anyone's interested in applying for either position with appropriate certification experience, please go ahead and do it right on our website. So we're excited about that. At school-wise, the midterms are finished over the high school, so we're now transitioning into our second semester. Hard to believe, we're already past the midway point. I can imagine it's hardest to believe for our seniors who are now getting into their 8th semester of school, and soon we'll be hearing back from colleges and all of the senior year experience is for students. So it's just amazing how quickly time flies. For us, for the budget, I'll be going to the Board of Selectmen's meeting at 9:30 on Thursday morning. Of course, board members are welcome to join if you like, and the budget will go before the Board of Selectmen, so I'll be sharing it with Deanna. The meeting starts at 8:30. I think we're on at 9:30. With Deanna, Steve, and Amy. So we have a newly constituted Board of Selectmen as well, so excited to start meeting with them and get going there. That's, again, welcome to come, but you can also Zoom in. I think it will be available as a link if you'd like to take a look. And the Board of Selectmen, as you know, they can provide feedback on the operating if they like, but really their deep dive is in the capital. And so we'll be talking about the capital projects that are there. Then the Board of Selectmen will put that together over the course of a week and a half or so, and then it'll transition to the Board of Finance. So I think it's about a week out that we'll be presenting to the Board of Finance to present them the budget. And throughout February, we'll be meeting with them and talking with them, both the whole Board of Finance and the liaisons that they have about the budget. And the board will be invited to all of those meetings, and I'll give you updates along the way if you're not able to make it, definitely. Beyond that, because February, with the February break and the way the schedule works, our meeting is not the first Monday in February, but the second. So we'll meet February 12th. Just a reminder to folks, of course, you have the invites out there. And then we'll get into the February break. And according to, last, probably most important piece is according to my meteorologist, we're looking at a non-event tomorrow. So although we might see some snow in the air, it'll be mood snow again like it was on Friday, hopefully knock on wood. And then even into Wednesday, we'll keep an eye on it to make sure, but it looks like we're going to be okay in southern Connecticut at this point. So hopefully we have a smooth week where that's concerned.
Great, thank you. Can I get a motion to adjourn? Penny, second. Matt Campbell, all in favor? Great, thank you. Have a good night.
Thanks.